It's the Agribusiness Report. I'm Tony St. James. We're joined today by the Honorable Tracey Mann, represents the big 1st Congressional District of Kansas. It's great to see you.
Great seeing you as well. Thanks for having me this morning.
Okay, a little update about the district. I know you can go from probably 100 degrees in one part of the district to snow in the other, but what do you see in district-wide right now?
Yeah, so I'm the western two-thirds of Kansas, except for the Wichita area and surrounding counties. So, our district, a lot of beef, a lot of wheat, a lot of milo, a lot of corn. We've been in a severe drought over the last year, but the last 6 weeks or so, we've got some nice rain. So that's good. Farmers are obviously getting their row crops planted right now. Our wheat crop, some areas are pretty decent. A lot of areas really poor wheat this year. But that's agriculture, and that's why we need crop insurance.
Now, the rainfall that came, we saw a bump in the markets for hard red winter wheat after the rain came, but it's really too late, isn't
it? For the most part, yeah. The drought was throughout the winter, and so people had poor stands, and you just can't make up for that. That said, there's some decent wheat around, but by and large, our crop's going to be way down this year.
Let's talk about the farm safety net, because that kicks in times of drought or flooding or prevent plant. All of that kind of originates through the Farm Bill. We're trying to reauthorize the Farm Bill. How's that going?
Yeah, so I'm on the House Ag Committee. Of course, our current Farm Bill expires September 30th, so we are up to our eyeballs in reauthorization, and that will continue. So my biggest priority is crop insurance. You have to have tools in place to help our producers navigate the risks posed by Mother Nature. Crop insurance is a very successful public-private partnership, a lot of other priorities as well, but crop insurance is front and center for me as we look at this next Farm Bill.
There are some concerns that when it comes to reference prices, we might need to do a little work. Are you hearing that?
Yeah, absolutely are hearing that. And I think it's important to realize the reason Farm Bills are 5-year bills, so they can be updated, long enough to provide some certainty, but short enough that they can be updated to reflect the times. And you look at the current reference prices for some crops, way below what current market values are. I would be in support of raising those reference prices. The degree to which we can do that is to be determined as we're looking at that right now.
You hit on a perfect point. The fact is, we've got a budget issue, maybe a spending issue. I'm not sure. I'm not going to jump in the middle of that. But does that put pressure on those of you who are trying to write the Farm Bill?
So I think there's pressure throughout Congress in every bill to figure out how do we get our fiscal house in order. We're $31.4 trillion in debt. What we're spending is not sustainable. That said, we look at the Farm Bill. Certainly, you could argue that what's more important than the food that feeds all of our citizens. We got to remember the Farm Bill, 81% of that money goes to food nutrition programs. Less than 20% today goes to ag producers, risk management tools. So those are things we need to look at as well.
Now, for some producers who were having to figure out a way to move some money around to make sure they complied with a rule, which has now changed 3 times in the last, 6 years? Talking about waters of the U.S., that's not something we have to really worry about right now, is it?
Delighted to see the Supreme Court's action. So, co-sponsored legislation, so the House approved legislation that would strike down the regulation. The Senate did as well. This was a few weeks ago. The President, of course, vetoed that resolution, but then the Supreme Court stepped in, and 9-0, it wasn't 5-4, 9-0, the Supreme Court said that no, the federal government does not have jurisdiction over farm ponds, drainage, which non-navigable bodies of water. Is a good day for America. Freedom grew, federal government shrunk that day, and that's good here moving forward.
So is it possible to even hope for something similar when it comes to Lesser Prairie Chicken?
I'm very hopeful. So those of your audience that haven't followed this issue, Lesser Prairie Chicken, the federal government has been in the process of trying to add that to the threatened species list, also the endangered species list, another subpopulation farther south and west, but in Kansas, adding to the threatened species list. We are optimistic that the bill that would strike down the regulation will come before the House It passed. I co-sponsored the bill, passed the subcommittee, passed the committee the other day. Hopefully, it comes to the floor here this summer. That would strike down the regulation altogether. Also, it's being, to your point, it'll be vetted by the courts. Hopefully, it'll be struck down as full court press to try to kill that horrible law that's really bad for ag producers at the end of the day.
And a bit of a surprise when this listing came down, because producers, landowners were already trying to work voluntarily with I believe U.S. Fish and Wildlife to make sure that it was protected. Does that kind of cut the legs out from under?
It does. It's very frustrating. And you look at the population of the bird, it almost exactly mirrors rainfall. So we've been in a drought the last 2 or 3 years. So of course the population is going to dip. Heard from an ag producer in southwest Kansas the other day that said a lesser prairie chicken was seen in one of his pastures. So he had to move all of the cattle out of that pasture and the 2 adjoining pastures. These regulations make absolutely no sense. And we need to see them struck down, and we need to see the Biden administration, stop this egregious overreach for our ag producers.
It's so good to see you. So good to hear that Mother Nature has provided a little more rainfall for you. We wish you the best.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Great seeing you as well.
Again, it's the Honorable Tracey Mann, who represents the 1st Congressional District of Kansas, and joins us on today's Agribusiness Report.